Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you all to today's ICA Dialogue Hub. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome you all to today's ICA Dialogue Hub. It's a new initiative that was launched by our Director of the People and Culture Group, and which is giving us an opportunity to come together as a community and engage in a meaningful conversation about our ICA contract modality. My name is Simonetta Silicato, and I'm a senior advisor in the Asia region in the Office of the Regional Director, and I'm very honored to be the moderator of today's sessions. The objectives of this very first ICA dialogue session is to basically inform about the progress of the ICA enhancement and to share the success of the introduction of each element so far, and to review the questions that have been asked in the last global town hall and in other fora, and open up the discussion for additional questions. And of course, also to engage into a discussion with our panel association representatives who are here with us to voice your questions and concerns. But before we get into the session, I would like to share a few administrative points with you today. The session will last 1 hour and 15 minutes, and it will be recorded. As it is a live stream, it is unfortunately not possible for you to raise hands or to send in chat messages, but please do use the Slido link to send in any additional questions that you have. We will definitely try our best to answer all the questions that were submitted so far in a dialogue manner between the UNOPS personnel representatives and the panel. But should there be more questions that we don't get time today to address in the call, we will definitely get back to you with a response via an FAQ spreadsheet that will be published in the Global Weekly Newsletter. But now, please let me introduce our panel members today. We have with us Valerie Kushata, our Director of the People and Culture Group. Then we have with us Victoria Campbell, the Deputy Director in PCG. Alejo Eiris as an expert on the ICA Enhancement Project. Then we have Pedro Gracia Toquero from the Copenhagen Personnel Association, and Kailash Balendran, a member of the Mogadishu Personnel Association. And in their role as personnel representatives, they will be engaging in a panel discussion and taking up questions that have been submitted and voted on by many of you. The panel will try to answer as many questions as possible, but also from the ones from the previous town halls as time allows, and of course based on the most popular questions. But now, please let me hand over the floor to Valerie for her opening remarks. Over to you, Valerie.
Thank you so much, Simonetta. Thank you so much, and welcome everybody. Like Simonetta said, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to our first ICA Dialogue Hub. And I'm pleased that so many of you have joined. Last I've just checked the number, it was about 650. Thank you very much for joining. From the outset, I want to share that when I joined UNOPS a month ago, which is, my 4th month now, it became very clear to me that personnel issues have been going on for some time and that we needed to establish an open forum of dialogue dedicated to this ICA modality. And I want to assure you that it is our responsibility as an organization to provide you with the support and resources you need to succeed and to ensure that you have the opportunity to reach your maximum potential. As the PCG or HR director, I have a responsibility for you, for your well-being, for your learning progress, for your professional development, for your security, and for your engagement. That's the only way we can create an enabling culture within UNOPS. I want to further assure you that I accept openly here that there are lessons to be learned from the past and that it will take time to build trust in this dialogue, but it is still possible. It is very possible to build the trust. All it takes is both parties to be willing. As my personal initiative, this ICA Dialogue Hub intends to be open, where to create an open and safe space where we can share our views of the challenges associated with the ICA contract modality, address your questions and concerns, and provide a space for co-creation and improvement of the contracting modality that we're talking about. It is my hope that by coming together as we are all colleagues, we can actively listen to the challenges we are facing. With respect, we can fully engage in constructive dialogue and honestly discuss the options that we can explore and those that we cannot. I think the authenticity and candidness and respect is fundamental if we are at least to give a start in building the trust. Let me talk a bit about where we are at the moment with the ICA modality. I want to be honest with you that while there's room for improvements, the ICA modality is an important part of UNOPS because of our delivery model. Personnel on the ICA or ICA contracts constitute a significant portion of the UNOPS workforce, accounting for 88% as of 31 December, which is about 24% ICA and LICA's 64%. Today, we can discuss where we are. I want to hear from you so that we can dialogue openly and agree and even inform each other on the direction that we're going. As UNOPS is a project-based organization with field locations, the ICA modality was developed by the UNOPS to cater for its needs and for those of its partners as well. The strength of the ICA modality is that it offers flexibility, agility, and is simple to administer from a contractual and benefits and entitlements perspective. However, since establishment in 2007 and over the past years, the proportion of ICA contract holders has been increasing in line with the growth of our project portfolio, and therefore the ICA contract modality has been continuously enhanced and strengthened. Let me share with you some of the most recent ICA enhancements. Number one, long-term sick leave coverage, ensuring that there is fee protection for our colleagues when they need it most during the sick leave. Greater coverage for security emergency evacuations. A strengthened voice and increased recourse channels, including performance rebuttal mechanism and requests for management evaluation. Travel and mobility payments for international assignments, enabling our colleagues to travel with family members and providing financial support when settling into a new location. Annual fee increments so that our ICA fees are no longer static, but they continuously get improved annually. Update of local ICA fee scales in line with the local UN ICSC scales. Additional elements to support disability in our fee setting. And I want to pay tribute to colleagues across the organization and the personnel representatives who have worked tirelessly to advance these improvements. Despite these improvements, there's still some other issues that we need to look at. And these ones are pertaining to the major one that everybody has been talking about of late, which is the ICA fee review for ICAs, for international ICAs. We are eager to finalize this review, and we know many of you have been expecting this, and you will soon continue to hear about this. To finalize the introduction of the new fee setting methodology for international ICAs, we have been doing a thorough review to ensure all fees are aligned with the new fee setting while aligning with the ICS levels in line with UN standards. I am pleased to let you all know that we will adjust ICA fees for our colleagues to at least the minimum of the new individual fee range, and our colleagues in ICS level 8 and 9 are mostly affected. It is important to implement this review in a consistent and systematic manner, not in an ad hoc manner. Hence, we have taken more time to organize ourselves in a manner that covers everyone, so that when we start the implementation, it will be for everyone. As you all know, adjustment of any fees is about money. There are budget implications for both HQ budgets and project budgets. So consultation with budget holders is critical as the next step. At the moment, as where we are today, Tuesday, we are hoping that a decision by PCG, jointly PCG, FG, and the Executive Office should be ready next week. And the implementation will be managed by local HR and country offices respectively once they receive the approval to implement. And this decision is we are waiting for the final figures so that we can all sit down and finalize in terms of the next step. It is important to me that I share with you from the outset that I've been listening and engaging with personnel and representative bodies since joining UNOPS in February. I'm aware from your extensive engagement in the global town halls that despite improvements, there are still important issues from personnel to address. For example, I've been hearing issues around the two classes of personnel classification, how it creates the them and us. I've been hearing all that kind of feedback from my fellow colleagues. And I also want to assure you that I accept that the extended use of this modality makes it even more important to ensure the related policies and processes are optimized at all times, and that the basic foundations, such as the contractual rights and conditions, the benefits and entitlements, are fair, transparent, and fit for a futuristic UNOPS organization, which is fit for purpose. So today, let us hear from colleagues in the PCG. I've brought Alejo and Victoria on some of the current work being explored in relation to the modality and the related timelines to ensure that all of us have access to the most up-to-date information, which is very critical for us to have the accurate and latest information. And also, through your questions, I really want to hear from you as well. I want to thank each of you for proactively raising your questions and points in Slido. I believe this is an opportunity to improve the dialogue with all of you regarding the ICA modality, understand your challenges, and explore areas of improvement. But above that as well, for you to also hear from us what we've been doing and what we're still doing with clear timelines and updates that are structured. This is the first of many sessions which we'll be holding, and I hope for a constructive, open, and honest dialogue today and moving ahead into the near future. I'm not so sure whether the next dialogue will have the same format, because some of the issues are relating to LICA contract holders, some are international ICAs. We will see how we can structure so that the sessions are fit for purpose as we go forward. Between these sessions in the interim, I would also encourage you to reach out to your local HR point, IPAS HR, and the ICA or the contract modality review team being led by Alejo and Victoria in the PCG. Finally, before I hand over the floor back to Simonetta, I feel that it is essential for all of us to be aware of the initiatives that exist within the UN system, which are relevant to today's discussion. On one hand, we see an increased interest and focus on the ICA modality across the UN system. In this regard, the Executive Board, the Board of Auditors, and the Joint Inspection Units are actively engaged in reviewing not only the ICA modality, but also other similar modalities that other UN agencies have established. On the other hand, the ICA modality serves as a benchmark for other UN agencies that are starting to embark on this journey as well. Some of them engage with us, seeking personnel services that help them implement their programs. Others have established very similar contractual modalities in order for them to adequately implement development projects alongside UNOPS. And as I said at the beginning, the ICA contracting modality is a need for UNOPS. But what is important is how do we seek the balance, a good balance of between the two contracting modalities that we have. And by continuing having this conversation, I would urge you, wherever you are, to self-organize yourselves and come together and form a personnel association. I'm sure other offices that have established, like Copenhagen, like Somalia, like New York, who are now starting on the journey, they can share with you what the TORs look like. And the Staff Association also has been helping personnel associations, to kickstart their journey. It is important that when we organize ourselves in such an organized manner, it is easy to cascade information and to also send information to us to alert us on any issues that we're working on. So I really want to thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to answering some of your questions that came through Slido, and thank you for being so open and candid about them. And I turn back to Simonetta to lead the session further. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Valerie, for your good words to start off the session and reminding us of all the the values in the ICA contract and how it changed over time. But I would like to hand over to Victoria now, who's actually bringing us through the ICA journey again and giving us a little bit of an insight into the roadmap to go into the future. Victoria, over to you, please.
Thank you, Simonetta, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon to colleagues all across the organisation. And let me just echo Val's words of what a pleasure it is to be here for this first ICA Dialogue Hub and have the chance to continue the conversation. I think from our perspective, we look forward to engaging with colleagues, to listening, and to making sure that we continue to evolve the ICA modality based on the feedback that we see we need. But first, let me just take a step back, and please, colleagues, if I could have the slides up, that would be great. Let me just take a step back and put this conversation in context. Because I think when you look back, you could see within the UN system, we used to have, there's a range of different contract modalities, and we used to have a contract modality that would be referred to as a project-based staff appointment. So we used to have UN staff appointments that were designed for project organizations and could be used in that way. They were referred to as 200 or 300 series appointments. These were phased out in the UN system in 2009. And at that point, UNOPS identified an opportunity or a need for us to have a contract modality that was fit for purpose and that addressed the needs of our organisation and how we're operating. And so at that point, it was a strategic decision and actually quite an important decision that the organisation made to develop a contract modality that suited the needs of our own organisation and those of our partners and our stakeholders that we're serving. And that modality has facilitated flexibility, agility. It's also given us access to specialized skills against the background of a wider UN system context that hasn't always been able to respond at pace or as swiftly as we need. I think that the way UNOPS is set up, our self-financing nature, our project-based nature, means that we will always have a duality of contract modalities. So we will always have a need for both the UN fixed-term appointments and the ICA modality. So it's not a question of either or, it's going to be a question of having both and having them alongside each other. I think over time, though, we can recognise that the boundary of how we've used those modalities has shifted, and the boundary between what's a core organisational structure and our project roles has been blurred. And that's created a number of workforce challenges that I think we can recognise, including somewhat an over-reliance on the ICA modality to engage personnel, and some talent management challenges, actually, both for our ICA population and our fixed-term population, in terms of how we can support a dynamic organisation where everyone can see themselves forging a career. So these challenges are what we're addressing with a number of projects, the ICA enhancement and the contract review, and I'm sure we'll get to those in the questions later. But our commitment from our side is that we will apply the contract modalities appropriately and we will apply them consistently. And that's what we heard last year, was it was a real call that we were applying our contracts consistently across the organisation, and that we will develop and enhance the ICA modality, the UNOPS modality, to the best of our abilities so that it can be the best that it can be. What you see on the slide here is the great diversity we have in our workforce and the nature of our workforce, with more than 5,000 colleagues spread, international ICAs and local ICAs, working in more than 150 duty stations across the organisation. So we have a very dispersed workforce and a very diverse workforce. And about 30% of our international colleagues and about 50% of our local nationally recruited colleagues are working in non-family locations and hardship duty stations. So we're really trying in all of our thinking and all of our development and enhancement to think globally around these issues and to make sure that we are addressing all of the things that we need to in terms of the contracts, the benefits and the entitlements. The continuous enhancements that we do on the ICA modality, and I'll come on to what we have done so far and what we still have to achieve. The continuous enhancements will always be a priority for us and a strategic priority in our people issues, and it will continue to be an area of focus. And I think we can only welcome these conversations and these questions and the dialogue so that we can make sure that we are listening and addressing the concerns that are raised. Maybe we could go to the next slide, please. Val has spoken already about some of the initiatives, but I did just want to take a moment, and I'm not going to go through everything that's on the slide, but I did just want to take a moment to highlight some of the developments that have come in recent history, and also to reiterate that this is not going to have a finite end. This is an ongoing project where we will continue to evolve the modality to make sure that it's fit for purpose, fit for our personnel, fit for our organisation, and fit for our partners. Some of the things I would highlight that you see on the screen here would be back in 2014, the introduction of the Provident Fund. This is a savings scheme for our local and nationally recruited ICAs, where UNOPS also has a paid contribution. So it's a longer term savings scheme that provides benefits for our colleagues. And we have a voluntary enrolment for that for our international ICAs. And then more recently, if we come that you can see there's a range of things, but if we come up to 2021, you can see we introduced, as Val mentioned, some fee protection. So in case of long-term sickness, and this is expanded beyond our local colleagues, but also to our international colleagues. This is one of those benefits that until you need it, you don't realize how important it is. And it's something that I'm really proud we've been able to bring in for this contract modality. And since we brought it in, we've had around 60 colleagues that have benefited from this extended fee protection and long-term sick leave. Then more recently, if we go back to last year to 2022 and early 2023, there's a raft of initiatives that we came in under this more recent ICA enhancement project. The mobility support, which was something new we introduced for our international ICAs, was designed to support colleagues and their families when they're relocating from one location to another, to really support international mobility and greater diversity. And since we've introduced that, we've had more than 130 colleagues and their families that have benefited from that support. So travel and relocation, settlement, financial support. So it's something that we're very proud of, and it's something that we see as impacting on international mobility and also greater diversity in our workforce with that financial support. The other two pieces I would highlight are really around the speak up culture and reinforcing those recourse channels that colleagues have. So in September last year, we introduced the performance management rebuttal for our ICA population, so a recourse channel for colleagues who receive a less than satisfactory performance review. Since we've introduced that, we've had a small number of colleagues, so 5 ICA colleagues that have submitted rebuttal cases, and they have all been managed through that regular process, but we've opened up that channel so that there's a formal recourse there. And then we have the management evaluation requests. So we introduced, again, a formal channel for colleagues to challenge decisions from the organisation or from management. And those are also in use with a small number of colleagues that have started to use those mechanisms that are managed, of course, through our legal group and the colleagues in the legal team. Then if I move to the fee, the fee protection, the fee methodology and the changes that we brought in September around that. And as Val mentioned, we recognise this is a hot topic in that way. But the intent of bringing in those new fee setting methodology was to have increased objectivity and increased transparency around it, and to align ourselves with the UN standards and the UN classification standards around how fees are set. So we have more objective methodology around how that works. And then, of course, at the same time, we brought in retroactive salary scale adjustments for our national and local ICA colleagues. So that was something that we brought in, knowing the importance of keeping those scales up to date for our colleagues. We're now bringing them in line with the ICSC recommendations and the ICSC effective date. And then if we come up to date in 2023, of course, in January this year, we brought in for the first time annual increments for our international ICA colleagues. And again, this was something that has been in place already for our local ICA colleagues, but it was the first time we brought it in January of this year. And already, I think nearly 900 colleagues have benefited from that, and the rest will follow through the anniversary month as we move through this year. And then we have the piece that I think we will touch on, I'm sure, in some of the questions as well, around how do we manage the fee review going forward, and for our current ICA colleagues that have had a fee set earlier in that. But I hope this gives you an example, or it shows the journey that we have been in on the contract modality overall, and the continuous evolution and improvements that we bring. And I think if we move to the next slide, you'll see we also recognise that this is a journey that still continues. There are further pieces of projects that we look at and further pieces of work. Some of these will, of course, be driven by the feedback that we receive from colleagues. Some of them will be driven by, as Val mentioned, the broader landscape that we're operating in and recommendations that could come from other sources. But maybe I'd like just to touch on these pieces that we recognise are still to be done, and I'm sure some of these come up in the questions as well as we move through this meeting. But on the fee review process, this is something that since we brought in the new fee setting methodology in September last year, we have known we will need to do. We want to make sure that our current colleagues and population have their fees reviewed to be in line with the new fee setting methodology. And we commit that we will do that review for all of our ICA population, and we will make sure that the fees are brought into line at least to the minimum of that fee range. It may be that there will be certain parts of the population that will be more affected by that. So as Val mentioned, we anticipate that it's largely our junior colleagues where we will need to adjust the fees, but we will make sure that the review is done across the board. There's also a piece around the cost of living. We recognise that this is particularly challenging in recent months, both for our locally and nationally recruited colleagues and also for our international colleagues. And we started some analysis last year to see how we could better manage that for our international colleagues. And we have now engaged with a consultancy who will come in and look at the overall international fee setting scales and see how we could best do that, because it's actually quite a complex piece of work. And I think we recognise we'd like to bring in some external expertise that can look at that and set it also in the context of the UN environment. And then, as I mentioned, we have introduced for our local colleagues a retroactive application of any of the ICSC changes. And without getting too technical there, this is really about UNOPS recognising all of the ICSC work and the UN salary scales that are done locally and making sure that they can be implemented in our projects and in our country office. And at the same time, our colleagues in PCG and through our country offices, we also lobby with the ICSC to make sure that those recommendations and those reviews are done in an up-to-date way, and making sure that they can be as timely as possible. So we're really trying to play an active role with the ICSC as well in terms of advocating for this work. Finally, I think there's a piece around hardship leave that we've heard. Again, if you look, about 30% of our international workforce is working in a non-family duty station, and we do have hardship leave in place, but we recognise that there may be some further work to be done to expand that entitlement in some locations, and that's something that we would like to look at as part of the next steps. And my last point on the slide there is, of course, all of these initiatives that we've brought in, we need to continuously evaluate and review. So the pieces that we brought in September last year, we committed already then that after a 12-month period, so coming into September this year, of course, we should review and evaluate and see what needs to be adjusted. And I'm sure that we will have some lessons to be learned from that and some pieces that we may adjust as we go forward. I think I will pause there. I hope I've been able to give a flavour of a lot of the work that has been done and how we've prioritised that work. But of course, we recognise there's still further work to be done. The modality will remain a key feature in UNOPS. And from our perspective, we want to make sure that it's fit for purpose and that it supports us and enables us in delivering for our projects and engaging with our colleagues. So I think on that note, I'll stop there, Simonetta. Thank you very much, and back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Victoria. It was quite amazing to see how much it actually changed the ICA contract modality since 2008. And I noticed that the more we come to the recent years, the more changes are coming. And we're really very, very happy about this initiative now in PCG that you keep on working on enhancing the ICA contract modality and that we all can be part of it. But now to the next segment of today's session, which will be the panel discussion. And we will be addressing the questions that were sent in by all colleagues globally through Slido and also the ones asked in the last town hall. And it will be Pedro and Kailash and me asking the questions to the panels. So can I hand over to Pedro for the first question, please?
Yes, thank you, Simonetta. And before asking the first question, I just wanted to make a follow-up comment on what Valerie was saying, and I'm just encouraging our field colleagues just to create personal associations as in many countries as possible. And from the Copenhagen Personal Association and also from the recently created Mogadishu Personal Association, we will be really happy to guide you in the first steps to take, okay? So that being said, I will ask the first question, and it's for you, Victoria, and the question is, good afternoon. The annual pay increases have now come into effect. Though, when will the review take place for current salaries? Many of my colleagues have been on ICA contracts for years with no pay rise. And as such, new starters with less experience are currently earning more.
Thank you, Pedro, and thank you also for the encouragement for colleagues to create and support personnel associations. Yeah, maybe to come to this question, so we've touched on it, but let me be quite specific around it. I think, firstly, we introduced, I think we can say we're coming into a new chapter around the ICA modality. And so this raft of enhancements that we saw coming in last year, were approved by senior management, and we really want to enhance and improve the modality with a lot of different pieces. And of course, when you do that, it requires some change management and some planning around how we manage this, both for our colleagues, but also for our projects and our budgets as well, in terms of how we manage this in the organization. So the first part of the question, yes, indeed, in January this year, we brought in the annual increments, and they were applied for all of our international ICAs on the anniversary month. So the majority of colleagues will have received one by now, but if you haven't, it's because you haven't yet come up to that anniversary month. But as we move through the year, that will happen. And that's the first time that the ICA fee is no longer static. So I think it's an important piece, along with our local ICA colleagues or with staff, that there's an annual increment that's coming in. But the crux of the question is really around the fee review, and when will the review take place for our colleagues? And I think Val spoke to that in her introduction. This has been a piece of work that we have known we need to do and we have committed to do. But of course, we need to make sure that we do it in a responsible way for our organisation and for our projects. So we are, after quite some thorough analysis, we're, I think, ready to make a decision in the next couple of weeks. And then we will, through our country offices, be able to implement that, I would say, over a period of the next 2 or 3 months, because it needs to be implemented, of course. This is a large number of colleagues and a piece of work that needs to be done. But the commitment we have is that all of the fees will be reviewed. And if it's warranted, they can be adjusted to the new fee setting. And we recognise that's a piece of work that needs to be done.
Yes, Victoria, I have a follow-up question, and I wanted to ask you, will the fee review be implemented retroactively?
So this isn't probably going to be a popular answer, but I think the answer is it's going to be applied only going forward. So once we do this implementation and we do the fee review, we'll apply it going forward. We don't foresee that it's possible to go retroactive on it also from a budget perspective. So our plan is to make sure that we are, once it's done, that it will be done going forward only. Yeah.
Thank you. Now up to you, Simonetta, for the next question.
Thanks very much, Pedro and Victoria. Well, I will actually ask the next question, which is again for you, Victoria, please. When will revised fees due to increased cost of living be reflected in ICA salaries? We noticed the cost of living exercise was underway in November.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think this is another hot topic, huh? And actually, maybe there's 2 or 3 different elements to this, and I don't want to, there's 2 or 3 different elements that speak to the new fee setting methodology, an overall appreciation of cost of living, and how we can manage this. So our current methodology takes into account the cost of living that is at the time you're appointed. And that's how it has always been with the ICA modality. So we do the calculation based on when you start work, and that's how the fee is calculated. And so some of the differences we see at the moment in fees is also because of that methodology. So we know that in the last period, there's been quite dramatic changes in cost of living. And the piece of work that I think the colleague is referring to in November was the commitment that we have made to see how we can better manage that and how we can introduce an element that reflects cost of living in our ICA fee setting. And that is our ambition, and that is what we would like to do. As soon as you start to unpick that, you realize pretty quickly that it's quite technical and we will need some expertise. So one of the things I referred to earlier is that we've engaged in a consultancy that will come in and look at the overall ICA, international ICA fee setting methodology, and will provide us with some advice for how we can best do that in the context of the UN system and in the context of the operating environment that we have. So I think that's the answer for that. It is something that we have on our work plan. It is one of our priorities, but it's not a quick fix because there's quite some complexity to do that in terms of how it would be done. Having said that, I would also like to flag, just noting that the majority of our workforce that are nationally or locally recruited. So I would also just like to note the concerns that we have around the cost of living and the impact on our local salary scales based on those cost of living fluctuations. And we are in touch with a number of our country offices that have expressed concern around that. And what we can do there is lobby through the HR network, lobby with the ICSC and champion that we get those salary reviews done and changes done more swiftly than they are being done now. And we are also, we've made the commitment, of course, to apply those retroactively and to follow the ICSC guidance for our national colleagues. So there's two different elements to it. And I think it's really important to look at those local scales as well and make sure that UNOPS is following up to date and swiftly on those scales. And that's something that we brought in last year as well. And we will continue to lobby for, because more work can be done there around the methodology. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Victoria. I'll give you a little break now. I have the next question here in front of me, which is actually for Alejo. So the question is, the ICA enhancement project's new fee setting significantly reduces fees, especially for ICA 3 and higher. Newly introduced benefits do not make up for it. We are now less competitive, struggling to attract senior qualified candidates, particularly in field settings. Why such penalization? Alejo, over to you.
Thanks so much. Thank you for the question, Simonetta, and thank you for everyone to be here with us for this discussion. I want to very briefly also thank to all the colleagues in PCG who have worked tirelessly to get these changes that Victoria has gone through, to make them a reality, and to the personal association who has also been with us during this journey. And I think when we approached the ICA fee changes, we never did it with the intention of reducing fees. And actually, if I reflect to the previous questions where people are asking about why newcomers get higher fees with the new methodology, I think we can see that the intention was never to reduce fees. However, when we look into this at the design stage, we realized that we had a number of ICA levels that had a couple of ICS levels within that ICA level. So, for example, for ICA 3, which is the one in the question, we had the ICS 11 and 12. That meant that we had colleagues within an ICA 3 on one ICS level and colleagues within the same ICA 3 at the higher ICS level. And as a result of that, we had the fees set in a manner that was not really transparent. Why is that? Because people at ICS 11 could be paid as ICS 12 or vice versa. And one of the objectives of the changes that we put forward was to have a more transparent and more fair methodology, and also ensure that equal pay was received for equal work. So with the split of the fee calculator by ICS level instead of by ICA level, we achieved that. Of course, there's some individual scenarios where maybe an unintended result is that some fees could potentially be negative for colleagues that are moving at the level, lateral level in ICA 3, but before had ICA 3.12 and now they have ICA 3.11 fee setting. Right? And for that, we added a level of flexibility for the regional directors that could, when they saw situations that did not allow the organization to recognize the experience of colleagues, their tenure, or they could also see that situations did not allow fresh talent to be brought into the organization, to have an additional level of flexibility by adding 10%. And actually, we also revised the top range of the ceilings for those ICS 11 and 12. So I believe with these changes that were introduced, now the current methodology is fit for purpose. But as Victoria said, we are also looking into retaining a consultant to help us look at this one more time. And if there is any changes that need to be done, of course, we will be very happy to implement those. Thank you very much, Simonetta. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Alejo. I would now like to hand over to Kailash, who's asking the next few questions. Kailash, back over to you.
Thank you very much, Simonetta. Just to tell everyone, I'm from the Mogadishu Personnel Association, and just as my colleagues have been saying, the personnel associations are a really great platform and avenues for personnel, especially at the country level, to tackle issues that are of importance to you. And I highly recommend other countries that are interested in organizing themselves into such associations, because us here in Somalia have found great benefits of establishing this. So I just want to highly recommend that. My question is to you, Alejo. UNOPS offers Cigna insurance for international ICAs with the idea that it is negotiated package for UNOPS personnel. However, Cigna is charging exorbitantly high and approximately the same amount as it does for a private client. Can this be taken up with Cigna?
Thanks so much. This is a very important question, and it is a very challenging one, because we all recognize how difficult it is to reach and access medical services, and especially in certain locations, this is even more important to have a very good medical insurance. So I also want to take the opportunity to bring this to everybody's attention, and the same thing as we were talking before about the fee protection. You never know how important it is until you don't want to know it, right? And so that's an important call for everyone to pay special attention to this. What we did back in December 2021 was to try to identify the best possible option that was available in the market. And the only solution that we found was Cigna Select. So this is a competitive insurance package that we found, given the constraints that we had at the moment. But of course, it is a very complex market. We recognize that it's very difficult to find better solutions. We understand, based on the feedback that we are receiving about this session, that this is a topic of it's very important for colleagues and of extreme interest. So of course, we're going to keep trying to explore improvements. But the problem that we are facing is that the market is, as I said, very complex. And I recognize in the question that there is already a small benefit that we perceive that this is slightly better than what the private sector offers, or the private market offers. This is not or the reward that we want to achieve. Of course, we want to achieve as best as we can. So as I said, we will try to look into it one more time and see if there is anything that we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alejo. I see that Victoria would like to add to this question. Victoria, please.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to reflect, because it's a really important topic around medical insurance and health insurance for colleagues, and I think part of the challenge will be, we need to decide whether we go all in and it becomes a mandatory group plan that everyone has to be part of, and of course then you'll see greater benefits. So I think it's very relevant to table this conversation again and see where we take it. And I think it had a lot of votes, so that also tells us that it's something that's important for our colleagues, and it's also of course important for our organisation. So Alejo is very right. Everyone should make sure that they have the right insurance, but we also want to make sure that we're offering something that's that's adding value. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. I think this is the topic of the day. Valerie also wants to contribute. Over to you.
It is, and it's quite important because these things happen when the least you expect it, right? That's why it's insurance. And I just want to assure colleagues that today, earlier on, Alejo and I were in a meeting to discuss the same thing. We're trying to work on what is the best possible cover that we can try and probably bring for consideration that will be able to take care of all personnel's needs. It is important that to note also that the high inflationary markets that we are currently operating at the moment also is affecting also like service providers like the medical insurance companies, and so their prices they then tend to fluctuate and from time to time. But like Victoria was saying that if we were in a position to go in, all of us in, probably we could work on the economies of scale and try and negotiate a lower rate. But again, we want to give the flexibility that comes with your contracting modality of also reviewing it and seeing what best works for you. But anyway, in short, we are working on it. We're really looking into it. And I'm hoping that the next time we meet, we will be able to produce something for consideration, or through your personnel association, we can start sending something for consideration. Thanks, Monita.
Thanks very much, Valerie. I very much appreciate keeping the choice which insurance I actually take as an ICA contractor. I think that's really something to keep in mind. But let me hand over the floor to Kailash for another question, please.
Yes, thanks, Simonetta. Again, it's sticking with the insurance, and I think this is a question that's also very relevant to people who work in hardship duty stations, just like us here in Somalia. So the question is, health insurance is considered a basic and core benefit employers provide their personnel. Does UNOPS plan to offer or cover their international ICA population with health insurance? UNOPS personnel are working in hardship duty stations where it's absolutely necessary to have a corporate coverage. For you, Alejo. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kailash. And I'm going to be echoing a little bit what have been said before. When we did the selection of Signa Select, before that we did a review with the colleagues in the organization about what their preferences were. So our approach always is try to make informed decisions, and to do that, we try to get as much input as possible. What we found out is that the majority of colleagues, about 55%, preferred health insurance that was voluntary. So that's why eventually we ended up, and those are some of the constraints I was referring to, like what people prefer. That's why we ended up with a solution that is not a mandatory solution. The consequence of that is that there's no subsidy across the beneficiaries of the plan. So the market rate is really very similar to what we can obtain from this service provider. There is no possibility of adding benefits in the financial aspect, because typically in the mandatory plans, those benefits come because there's subsidization among the plan members. So that's a little bit where we are struggling. Of course, some of the work that we're going to be doing in the future is looking into whether this is what we really need to have, an opt-in, opt-out insurance, or whether a different provision needs to be given, something that would be mandatory. That would, of course, require that we look also into the fee setting and whether this component should remain to be part of the monetary retribution, meaning that the all-inclusive fee setting that we have today is calculated taking into consideration how much money someone has to use to procure this type of service from the market, or whether it has to come as an in-kind remuneration, in-kind retribution that the organization will put there for everyone, irrespective of their preferences or of their personal circumstances. As I said, and I think everybody understands very, very easily, it is a very complex situation because the population that we have is very diverse and has very different needs. Sorry. So different duty stations, different backgrounds, different personal arrangements make it very difficult to have a solution that is satisfactory for everyone. And that's why finding the sweet spot is very difficult. But we will keep trying, and I hope that with your help and with your support, we will get very close to that, if not just there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alejo. I really appreciate your response and understand the difficult situation you're in. Hopefully, once you find a solution, I'm sure all of us at the country level would really look forward to something that's affordable and appropriate for us. But thank you so much. I'd like to hand over to Simonetta. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Kailash and Alejo. Well, I'll take the next question actually myself and ask it to Victoria. In response to the last Board of Auditors report, UNOP said it closed the recommendation of reviewing ICA contracts to see if they fulfilled inherently UN functions. As no information was shared with staff, could you please describe the process or the criteria used and let us know if it is still ongoing?
Yeah, thanks, Simonetta, and thanks to the colleague for the question, because I think it gives an opportunity to explain some of this and maybe to provide some clarity around the different elements that are going on. The question speaks about the Board of Auditors recommendation in the report there, and that's one piece, and I'll explain that. But there's also a broader piece around how we as an organisation want to create the balance, and what I spoke to earlier about a consistent application across the organisation. So I think there's two elements to that. But actually, if to speak directly to the question around the Board of Auditors recommendation, that was a request that we would provide a list of those functions or those roles in the organisation that have that meet the policy requirements that we already have. And that list we have done, so it's been updated and it's been published. So that piece is in there. But maybe let me speak to the intent of the question, is that what does that mean and what's behind that? I think it's important that we see that UNOPS as an organisation needs to make sure that we have this balance between the different modalities and the different functions and how they're well used. What the Board of Auditors requested us to do, and actually, what our own senior management wanted to do, is making sure that we're using the contract modalities appropriately and we're using them consistently. Now, in our policy, just to get quite specific, in our policy, there are some quite clear criteria around what that would mean, and those roles that have to be encumbered by staff members. And these are the following. These are roles that have high level authority or decision making. So what I would call organizational stewardship. The roles that have discretionary decision making and high level authorities within the organization that are making decisions on behalf of the organization. The other criteria is roles that have significant fiduciary responsibility, so have significant financial management, or those roles that act as internal controls and custodians around financial policy. So there's some quite clear criteria there. And then roles that are establishing processes, managing oversight around transactions and entitlements, and then something around roles that are responsible for managing the security of personnel and security within our organisation. So that's what's in the policy. And what we have done is we have reviewed all of our positions that have those responsibilities, and we have published the list of those in our policy that would warrant staff appointments. So the first phase decision has been made. And then we'll come on to the implementation and how that will be implemented. But the audit recommendation was around defining those roles and clarifying that. So already we have made some decisions around our leadership roles that are in our country offices, so roles such as head of program, head of support services, and senior security roles. So senior security officers and roles that have responsibility for security of personnel. So within that list, we've included those roles and said going forward, those roles should be established as fixed-term posts. And then, of course, there's a process around how we'll implement that. And that piece is still ongoing, and we're in the implementation phase. I think there's a second part of the question is, does it end there? And there I would say, even if we've met the audit response and the audit requirements, there is still an ongoing review for other posts and other roles to make sure that we are balanced and consistent in how we're applying it. So even if we say we've met the audit requirement, I think there's still an ongoing piece of work around that. And the process for that is something that's led by PCG, but that is done in consultation with other stakeholders in the organization. And I will pause there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. The next question I will hand over to Pedro to ask, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Simonetta. Well, this question is for you, Valerie. So, and the question is, how do you plan to address the fact that ICA contract holders may feel like, one, first, second-class resources compared to their other FT colleagues, and the related inequalities that it creates, and second, they are not worth to be recognized as full-scale employees staff, being called individual contractors? That's a tough one.
That's a tough one, and not so nice one too, in terms of not the question, but in terms of the situation. But thank you, Pedro, for that question. As I said in my opening remarks, the ICA modality is important to UNOPS, and it was developed to respond to the way we work, the way we deliver the needs of our partners. And I see in the future in a UNOPS that is able to utilize both modalities, but it is about how do we get that good balance. So the ICA modality, when it comes to our partners, it offers the flexibility, it's simple to administer, it is strong foundation, benefits and entitlements. But as you will all know, throughout the years, we've done a lot to improve the conditions. I think we did share some of them, and Victoria shared a roadmap. And us being here today in this ICA Dialogue Hub is also a demonstration that we really want to make sure we align as much as possible, even if the contracting modalities may be different, but in terms of everyone feeling they are a reliable or respected, a worthy resource for UNOPS. And there's still a lot to be done, honestly, to ensure that the ICA modality is fit for purpose. And no one, and I repeat, no one should ever be made to feel like a second-class citizen in UNOPS. And I think that is not even anything that we should be speaking about. And I'm really sorry if any one of you has felt that way. It is not correct or right to feel that way. Each individual in UNOPS, whether an ICA or a staff, they're equally important and are vital to the success of UNOPS. I think you heard George talking about on the town hall, Team UNOPS. This is the messaging that's coming from George. He wants Team UNOPS. He doesn't want ICA staff contract, but he is expecting a Team UNOPS going forward. And as a result, we have to be able to look at how best can we align to that. And can we discuss ICA hiring? I will not even call it that, as procurement of a procurement process. That is a big thing that I had the challenge in accepting when I joined, and I heard that it's called ICA procurement of ICAs. It did not feel right for me. And I'm pleased to let you know the little effort that I have done, at least to push for a change of that process, is now called the hiring of ICAs. And also this oversight of the master sheet of the hiring of ICAs, we've requested that it be transferred from the procurement team to PCG. It is about people, so it should be where we talk about people. So this is something that's, I was surprised to hear, and these are some of the little things that make people feel like second-class citizens. And I really want to assure you and guarantee you, I'm really pushing to make sure that all those nitty-gritties, they do change, because everybody is valuable and everybody is a first-class citizen in UNOPS. We are Team UNOPS, as George says, and we need to demonstrate that in every aspect as we move forward. And I'm determined to continue the journey and find solutions to this challenge. And please do hold me to account for it. And I'm glad this live session is being recorded, so it's one that people can flag at me to say this is what you said. And I'm making a commitment today that it is one of the important things that I want to move forward in terms of having everybody feeling valued, respected, seen, heard, despite what contract you're holding in the organization. Back to you, Pedro.
Thank you, Valerie. Well, the next question is for you, Victoria. And when our colleagues are asking, well, UNOPS has a history of extensive use of non-staff modalities, ICA, including for people with clear employer-employee relationship, creating a dual workforce marked by unequal treatment. Despite improvements, better or fair, how will we ensure equality and equity moving forward?
Thanks, Pedro. And I would also, say thank you for the question. It's good that we now have a forum where we can discuss some of these issues and see how we can make sure we take it forward, and that we're also communicating well around some of the initiatives that we're doing here. I can only echo what Val said around inequality and people feeling perceptions about being second class or anything like that. That's really not our intention, to the extent that I don't think you will ever hear us refer to non-staff. We will not define people by what they're not. And that's why you'll hear that we're often very inclusive and using our term personnel, because all of the colleagues that work for UNOPS play a very valuable contribution. I think what we want to do now, and part of this initiative that was coming from the previous question, is this review of contract modalities and making sure that they are being applied consistently and appropriately across the organisation. And that is that first tranche that I spoke about earlier. That has been done, and there will continue. That process will continue with that review as we move forward. There is something I do need to say, though, that the criteria isn't based on length of service, because I often hear that this comes up, well, if we've worked for a long time in a certain role, then it should be staff, and that's not in the criteria for the functions that would be carried out by staff positions. So we need to recognise that balance in terms of what our organisation needs and how we can, as an organisation, be agile and be nimble and be ready to serve our clients and respond as we need. And that's why we developed the eco-modality, and how we can make sure that there isn't a perceived inequality there. That's very clear. So we will do this review, and I think we can commit that we will provide more updates and communicate more on it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Victoria. Oh, sorry.
No, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah.
I
see that the next question is actually to be asked by Kailash. So let me hand over to Kailash.
Yes, thank you very much, Simonetta. This question is for you, Victoria. Another one. How are we approaching the job insecurity of ICA holders of client project personnel? What are the statistics of tools like the pool of project managers for rehire reassignment due to project closure? Increased transparency of tools for personnel retention should be the basis for building trust.
Thanks, Kailash, and thank you for it's actually a really relevant question, and it's something that we're also discussing here in the team here around how we can provide some better support and different tools for these pieces of work. So really we're talking about talent retention across the organisation, both for our national colleagues and for our international colleagues, and how we can have tools and mechanisms and policies that support that. And I should preface it by saying, we're also really excited around the whole era of digital transformation and what that will bring to us. And we see the need for tools like talent marketplace, skills, talent matrices and things that will enable this. So of course, there's a longer term vision around how we can make sure that as an international global organization, we're better able to manage that piece. But in the meantime, I think the question was quite specific around retention of project personnel and how we can support that. So I take the opportunity just to share a couple of initiatives. And we're really trying to encourage retention and reassignment. So we've removed some of the obstacles that there have been previously around reassignment. So we have this pool, the pool of reassignments for project managers. So where we know that projects are closing, people can indicate their interest to be within that pool, and hires are made from that. So both hiring managers and our colleagues can be within the pool and can be used as a selection using a reassignment methodology, basically. I'm afraid I don't have the data to share with you today, but I'm sure we can have a look and see what's there and be transparent around that. We also have extended the provisions in policy now so that we can rehire colleagues. So if colleagues leave the organisation, they can be rehired. It used to be 6 months, it's now 12 months after they've left the organisation. And we've made the reassignment process easier, particularly with a focus on allowing reassignments from national colleagues in one country to international assignments. So we've lifted some of the barriers that used to be there. So there are quite a few initiatives there. And actually, we would welcome any suggestions for improvements or things that you think we could be doing differently. We're very open to hear about that. This is an initiative that I would, be really welcome to how we can pick up and support. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Victoria. I'll leave the next question with Kailash as well.
Thanks very much, Simonetta. The next question is for Alejo. Can ICA staff request for reassessment of responsibilities and compensation? If yes, what are the processes involved? And if no, what would it take to make this comparably fairer, given that it's possible with P positions? Over to you, Alejo.
Thanks so much for the question. And before I get into answer, I would like also to show appreciation for the work that the local HR does in the field, because most of the times these type of questions, you could address them to your local HR, and I'm sure your colleagues will be able to help with that. And then IPAS HR will be the next in line to support in these type of processes that are well documented for the organizations. I also want to say thank you to our IPAS HR colleagues for the support they give us, and not only with this, but also with the insurances, which they have done a significant amount of work. But talking about this particular question, the same applies for ICA and for staff. We do have a reclassification process. So when a colleague believes that he or she has been performing the functions of a higher level position, and that has been for a significant amount of time, typically more than a year, then there is an opportunity to request that the terms of reference be reviewed to reflect the roles and responsibilities that are the actual roles and responsibilities. What we always ask is that colleagues ensure that this is properly documented in the performance appraisal. So one element of the policy is that the higher level responsibilities are reflected in a performance appraisal that shows 12 months of positive performance at the higher level. So once that is there, we can look at the TOR, compare them, and follow the reclassification policy that exists in PQMS. And as I said, both local HR and IPAS HR will assist you to make sure that the process ends with PCG where decisions can be taken. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Alejo. I'll leave the next question also with Kailash, as it's coming from Mogadishu.
Yes, thank you very much, Simonetta. And this question is for you, Victoria. It's from our Mogadishu Personnel Association, actually. As an incentive and a means to promote professional development of ICA contract holders, will UNOPS consider expanding and formalizing short-term internal assignments across UNOPS offices worldwide? This means personnel from one country are selected for filling short-term gap assignments, such as maternity leave cover, extended leave, and annual leave, in other UNOPS offices, and return back to their original office when completed. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. And I'm really pleased that you asked this one, because this is something that there's so much opportunity and potential we can do. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. We would like to work more on this. We have some thoughts already in place. We have some drafts around how we could do this. And I think we all recognize the enormous value in having that exchange and having that both from a career and a professional development point of view, but also from a knowledge sharing point of view, in terms of having an international organization, having colleagues that have the possibility to serve in different locations, whether it's headquarters or field or region, and exchange that. It's very powerful both for the individual and for the organization. So we already have some thoughts on it, and we do want to make it more systematic and more, I think, equal and open, which is what's implied in the question, that it's it's well managed. And of course, longer term, this is exactly what something like a talent marketplace or some of these digital tools will allow us to do, so that we can match skills and opportunities. But in the meantime, of course, there's some mechanisms we'd like to explore further, and it's something we would really like to support. Just the other day, I was talking to some colleagues in another country office about some of the challenges they've had actually in releasing colleagues for these sorts of assignments. So there are some obstacles we need to make sure we manage, and it's something that we would be very supportive of. I would like to flag that some of the programs we've done through our talent management programs, such as a national high performing program or the talent benches, we've been able to tap into those pools also and offer stretch assignments. And just recently here in PCG, actually, we had the benefit of having a colleague from one of our offices come and join us for 3 or 4 months to cover a short-term assignment, and it was really enriching experience both for the colleague and for us as a team. So thank you for asking, and yes, we will pick up on this and also pick your brains on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response, Victoria. Over to you, Simonetta.
Thank you, Kailash and Victoria. Well, we are almost running out of time, but there is time for one last question. And this question is for you, Alejo. And the question is, are there any plans to include family entitlements like single parent allowance or dependency allowance for spouses or disabled children in the ICA enhancement project? Currently, these benefits are not available to ICA contract holders. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Simonetta. In September 2022, we did introduce in the fee setting methodology changes, some changes that take into consideration the status of the household, the composition of the household of the ICA holder, and also the disability situation of the ICA holder, trying to be more fair and more transparent in terms of how we set fees in UNOPS. But I think the actual question is going more into these specific entitlements that are outside of the system. At the same time that we are doing this review, the ICSC is also doing a review of the compensation package for staff members. So while the current system that we see has some elements like, for example, the talking about single parent allowance that have been introduced not a long time ago, I do not expect that this will remain within the staff member compensation package, because they are very difficult to administer and they are not really delivering on the intended purpose that they had. Of course, there is a lot of work that has to happen there, and once that work finishes, we hope that we will have a new benchmark that we can look up to in order to process the new iterations of the ICA enhancement package. At the same time, we, as we have said, we are hiring a consultancy firm that will look into how we have changed the ICA fee methodology. And we expect that the learnings that we get from that exercise will also help us convey some learnings for the whole UN system about modern ways of looking at remuneration. So ideally, it's a feedback process that we engage with the UN system and the International Civil Service Commission, where we share our learnings and our experience from the ICA contract. They also allow us to have a conversation with them about the staff compensation package, and when decisions are taken, the different modalities help us move the organization further into a much more mature stage. Maturity never has a limit in terms of how we remunerate the workforce. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Alejo. And thanks to all the other panel members for answering the many questions that we got from everybody in UNOPS. And thank you for everybody sending in the questions. It's really important to be part of this process of developing a good contract modality. And thanks very much to Valerie and the entire PCG team for actually really having the session today. But now let me hand over to you, Valerie, for last closing remarks, and thanks very much.
Thanks, Simonetta, and thank you, colleagues, for also answering the questions. Not going to be long in closing, but just to reassure you, we are here to make sure that we get a solutions or sustainable solutions to this modality. How the modality started and where we are, there's a big difference. And I think with George coming in, it's also an opportune time that he also experiences it, and also it leads us into what he wants to see going forward. He understands the challenges that this modality has got, and so it's not anything new to him. But I want to assure you from PCG perspective, let's continue talking. Dialogue, I think, is the solution to many of the conflicts that or challenges that people face. So let us continue talking. And it doesn't mean that we're going to be talking and being nice and hugging each other, but we need to have those healthy, tough conversations like these ones, and holding each other to account. When we say we're going to deliver this, you hold us to account. So I'm encouraging you that even outside of this Dialogue Hub space today, please reach out to the team. Please reach out to us, and we can support you as much as you can. For many of you that have specific individualistic technical issues around your specific contracts, please do reach out so that we can discuss your specific situation separately from the town hall. And since this is the beginning of this Dialogue Hub, we will be sharing a feedback form to seek feedback from you on how to improve the next ICA Dialogue sessions and how they should be. But we also really want honest, candid feedback. It's not about making us feel good, but it's really making us also pick the lessons learned and also improving the future dialogue sessions, so that at least they are productive and they're incremental in terms of building up on having modalities that really work for the future of UNOPS. So thank you so much, and back to you, Simonetta.
Well, thank you, Valerie. I think that it's for today. And joining in, please keep on asking questions. Please keep on raising concerns. Please keep on participating. It's us, everybody working in UNOPS, who makes the organization. And see you at the next ICA Dialogue Hub. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.